Observe the chameleon, a remarkably unique and beautiful creature that excels at morphing itself and blending into its surroundings. Now observe this species, a remarkably selfish and dangerous creature that excels at manipulation and lies. I've wanted to talk about this topic for a very long time. I'm talking since I was a child in the 1920s. So you better sit your little cute behind down and listen, because I grew up witnessing how certain people, usually the more trusting, gullible, or naive types, were constantly being taken advantage of by a very specific brand of predator, the impostor. It's very commonplace to use the word chameleon to describe certain people's tendency for switching personalities and morphing into different people. But I think we owe the beautiful and unique chameleons of the world an apology, because that is not a fair comparison to make. I mean, have you seen chameleons? They're adorable. As I said in the intro, chameleons are innocent creatures who are actually good at blending in with their surroundings. It's a feature that's natural to their species. It's effortless. But the same cannot be said about the pathological level of fakery of a certain subspecies of very dangerous human beings. Now, when I talk about morphing personalities, I'm not talking about the temporary masks that some of us put on depending on certain social situations. For example, when you're at work and you're just that little bit more patient and smiley with your boss or maybe customers. Whereas when you're around your friends or your family, you don't have to put on that extra little bit of fakery, I suppose, of effort, because you can just be yourself. I'm talking about people who seemingly don't have a self. They're like an empty vessel, and they go about life literally changing every single thing about them, their entire identity, to shape it around the people or the social set that they wish to win over or infiltrate. These people will go to extreme lengths to dupe everyone around them, including researching their targets and taking on their likes and dislikes, their hobbies and interests, their sense of style, fashion, their taste in movies, the way they walk, the way they talk, you name it, they'll copy it. And as you observe these creatures in action, you'll find yourself both fascinated and disturbed at the ease with which they can just swap out personalities, much in the same way that we change clothes. Take, for instance, one of the most famous examples of such a creature, Meghan Markle, who went from wannabe it girl, Soho House influencer / actress to a very short stint as a pretend feminist and humanitarian, because humanitarians regularly use impoverished children as props for self-promotion, to morphing into a wannabe politician before landing, for now, on the most privileged multimillionaire victim in the galaxy persona, with a 43% dash of Nigerian this time around. Of course, she's not the only one. I'm using her as an avatar. I've met people in my off-screen life who are just as bad, if not worse. But you may all have heard of a certain Amber Heard. Amber, incidentally, seems to display very similar tendencies, very similar characteristics to Meghan Markle. And upon examination of her public career, she went from shy, soft-spoken, Southern belle ingenue to the tough, rugged, tomboy, cool female version of Johnny Depp, before conveniently landing on domestic violence victim and #MeToo activist.
It happens to so many women, you know, when it happens in your home behind closed doors with someone you love, it's not as straightforward.
I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
But what's vital to point out is that these changes didn't just take place naturally over the course of time, over decades even, as life shapes us and takes its toll and leaves its imprints on our canvas. No, these changes practically happen overnight and in a very calculated, deliberate manner. And I can attest to this because I have witnessed it with my own eyes happen time and time again. I mean, when it comes to Meghan Markle, if you've read Tom Bower's book, Revenge, you would remember that she literally told her agent, I want you to make me a humanitarian. But that's why these changes, if you're aware of them and if you've noticed a pattern in a specific individual, appear so sudden, so drastic, and so frequent because they're always implemented with one goal in mind: manipulation. And thus, whenever a new desire arises or a new target appears, a new persona is crafted in tandem. Now, this can all seem quite perilous, but there is a silver lining, which I wholeheartedly believe through life experiences and observation since the 1920s that we must seize and hold on to: instinct. Because unlike chameleons, no matter how long these particular imposters have been playing the game, their efforts rarely come across as effortless, despite their best efforts to do so. And I believe that that's because most of us humans, apart from the Prince Harrys of the world, have a built-in radar to detect the specific brand of BS. And whether you know it or not, it instinctively goes off every time such a performance is put on. Think back to Meghan Markle's engagement interview. That entire interview was a major red flag if there ever was one. But it can easily be condensed into this one minuscule clip.
I had one question. I said, well, is he nice?
And that was it. Barely a few minutes in the limelight that she has so coveted throughout her then 36 years on this planet, when she was a blank slate and no one knew anything about her shady past and her greasy climb to the top. This is how she chose to introduce herself to us.
Well, is he nice?
She already set off alarm bells from the UK to the States and beyond. Little did we know, of course, back then that that display of saccharine fakery was merely the beginning of an endless path of destruction, of lies, of tearing families apart and instigating race wars. We didn't know it, but we felt it, or we felt something. You'll find a similar story with Amber Heard. I mean, her entire courtroom performance was a red flag, but I'm talking way earlier than that, as I've referenced before. You will note that she used the same sickly, sweet, breathy, soft-spoken persona at the start of her career.
Johnny Depp is who he is because he is this enigmatic presence that is hard to define, is hard to label, and hard to pin down.
And even though she was relatively an unknown at the time, just like Meghan, with no baseline for her true personality for us to work with, there was still something that just seemed so off and so awfully contrived about her. Like a Stepford wife. But like Meghan, her mask would slip more times than not. And that's because we're not chameleons.
Hold on one second.
No problem.
Courtney, I can't do this if people are coming in and out of the door. It's really distracting. Extremely.
It's not in our nature to just morph into different people as the need arises to manipulate them and lie and get whatever it is that we're after. It's not natural to us, which is why our instincts fight against it and pick it up instantly sometimes. And it takes a lot of effort for us to be fake. Even those of us who live a fake life as these women do, it's actually exhausting, I would imagine. I mean, just take a look at Meghan's face. No wonder she's always clenching so hard. She's holding on to the mask with dear life. But this unsettling feeling that you get as you watch these predators, these imposters perform, are your animal instincts telling you to steer clear of danger. It's a survival mechanism. Even Johnny Depp explained on the stand that his instincts fired up very early on in the relationship with Amber, but he actively chose to override or ignore them. A disastrous choice, as the entire world would later learn, but something which I believe a lot of us do in our own lives more times than we would care to admit. But this is what I would imagine as some version of a utopia. Imagine a world where we followed our instincts instead of ignoring them. Imagine a world where these dangerous predators, these imposters, couldn't fool us. What if the Johnny Depps of the world, trapped in abusive relationships as they were, listened to their instincts early on and cut off their abuser? What if Prince Harry had listened to, anyway, he has no instincts, but what if he listened to the instincts of his family, who warned him very early on not to get too serious too quickly with Meghan Markle?
Was he nice?
I'm sure everyone can think of someone, or even yourselves, who would have fared a lot better had you just listened to that nagging on the inside, that whisper in the back of your mind telling you there's something off about this person. I don't like it. Because as civilized as we all like to think we are, we're mammals at the end of the day, living in our own version of the wild, concrete jungle it may be, preying on the weak and being preyed upon by the predators among us. And make no mistake, these people, these imposters, are predators. And they rely deeply on instinct to seek out their prey. It's no coincidence that they seem to target a specific type of person. Think Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, while steering clear of others. It's because they can sense, they can sniff out the gullible and the trusting and the naive among us. While those of us who are switched on and awake to their machinations, we're left alone. So I say, why don't we all take a leaf out of these predators' books? These imposters who heavily rely on instinct and are sometimes, unfortunately, successful in their pursuits. Why don't we rely on our instincts to steer clear of them? If you have to override a feeling, especially a nagging one that you can't explain, maybe you shouldn't. Master the art of listening to your instincts, and I promise you, they'll steer clear of you before you even have to think about steering clear of them. Just something to ponder from little old me from the 1920s. I've been here a long time. You know, I've seen a lot of things, and thought I'd share some golden nuggets that have been acquired over the past century. Speaking of nuggets, I'm hungry. It's time for me to eat breakfast, and so I'm gonna do that before my stomach embarrasses me by growling in public. Bye.